All right, CNT125, we are working on our firewalls and security lab. We're on the second part now where we're going to work with our router and put some access control lists on. This will allow us to, if you remember when we did subnetting and inter-VLAN routing, we put the VLANs and the subnets together. We allowed inter-VLAN communication. We're now going to add access lists to the top of that, so that's going to limit the inter-VLAN communication that we have set up. That's what that's going to do. So on the next page, we have a blank map. I took a minute and I subnetted and filled in my IP scheme I'm going to use. I borrowed 2 bits, 192.168/18, so 2 bits. So I'm going to have the 64, 128, 192 subnets for VLAN 1, 10, and 20. And this will be 64.1 for admin VLAN 1 here. This will be 64.2 for this admin VLAN 1 IP address on the switch. VLAN 10, we're assigning 128.1 for this subinterface, 192.1 for this subinterface here, and then our workstations would be 128.10 down here with a gateway of 128.1, and this PC will be 192.10 with a gateway of 192.1. So that'll be my scheme. I quick filled out my map. And I actually made a copy of this and put it on my second monitor, so I just have it for easy reference. You might want to do the same thing or slide this to your second monitor or something for easy reference. All right, we're now going to work on this part of our network here. So we are going to jump in here and we're going to configure our switch with the name, IP address, VLANs, VLAN trunk that we need. Okay, so let's slide this guy over here a little bit. And I'm going to connect into my switch. There we go. Now that I have my switch up and going, now I can bring this back. And let's connect into the switch. Let's do enable. We're going to do config T. We're going to give it a host name. And I think, what are we using on this guy? We're using 2960 ACL. That's what we're doing. Host name 2960 ACL, so I know it's the access list part of our lab. After that, we will put an IP address on here, so interface VLAN 1, IP address, looking at my map, 192.168, I'm doing 64.2, that way I don't conflict with the router, and borrowed 2 bits is 192.0, that's our subnet mask, 192.0. We'll say no shutdown on this guy to bring him online. Excellent. So I now have that. I need my VLANs. And this one we're just doing 2. VLAN 10, name. Looking at my map, we have employee. So name employee. Exit VLAN 20, name. This one we're calling visitor. VISITOR. There we go, visitor. Exit. So there's my 2 VLANs. We want to do a range on these guys. Interface range, FA0/1 to 5, I think, for the first one. Yeah, 1 to 5. Switch port, access, VLAN 10. Exit, interface range, 6 to 10. Switch port access, VLAN 20. Exit, oh my goodness, exit, there we go. We now need to do our trunk port, which our trunk port here is port 24. This guy's port 24. So we want to bring him online. Interface FA0/24. Switch port mode trunk. Exit. And that's all of our basic config. Now let's add the remote config. So this might be something that's a little fuzzy or it's been a while, so we'll add this config on for good practice. Enable secret class, slow down, make sure it's right. We're going to add our console password, line con 0, password Cisco, login, exit. Let's now do line VTY015. We'll do input. Ooh, transport input. There we go. Transport input SSH. Login local. Exit. Let's put in our username. This time we're doing test. with a password of IP domain name CNT.org. We need to create our crypto key generate RSA. Do you want to replace it? Sure. Hit the enter. Exit. We'll do a show run on this guy. There is our name. There's our enable secret. There's our username of test and password of password configured. There was our SSH up there. Okay. Here's our VLAN, VLAN 10, VLAN 20. There's our trunk port. And then here is our configuration for SSH to log in, and then also our console password configuration. I'll do a copy run start on this guy, and that is our switch up and running. Oh, I also want to do a show VLAN. I forgot to do that earlier. That way I can check to make sure my names are correct. 10 employee 1 to 5, 20 visitor 6 to 10. Okay, so there is our switch configured for this part of the network. All right, let's now move over to the router. And again, this will be a lot of review, a lot of stuff we've done before. So on this guy, enable config T, host name on this guy. We're using this one's 4321 ACL. That's our host name. And here we also want to do our enable secret class. Slow down, make sure it's right. Line console 0 on this guy. Password Cisco. Login. Exit. Let's do our remote access 015. We want to do transport input SSH. We want to do login local, meaning the account is being stored local. We're going to do username on this guy. We're also going to do test and password of password, just for generic sake on this one. IP domain name CNT.org. Crypto key generate RSA. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. 512, yes. And now our basic name, password, and remote access configured on the router as well. Now, let's go to our interfaces. So on here, we're going to do interface, and we're going to do the WAN side. In this case, it's our gigabit 001. So interface gigabit Ethernet 001. We're going to say IP address DHCP. That way it's going to pick up from the ISP, so no shutdown on this guy. Give this a minute and it should pick up an IP from the ISP. We're now going to do the inside interfaces, which is going to require our sub interfaces. So interface on this one, gigabit Ethernet 000 is the inside. Excuse me, there we go. We're going to say no IP address. We're going to say no shutdown, and that's the physical port. We're now going to do our logical ports. So we'll say interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0/0.1 for VLAN 1. We'll put a description in here. Description, I'll say router interface admin VLAN 1 or something like that. Nice basic description so I recognize what it is when I see it. Remember, we need the encapsulation first. Dot 1Q1 for VLAN 1. And I'll set my IP address on here. Now 192, on my example I did 192.168, and I'm doing for this one 64.1. I'm double checking my map over there and make sure it's good. 255.192.0. Exit. Now I'm going to do my next sub interfaces. I'm going to use the up arrow here. 10. I'm going to put the description up there. Router interface for employee VLAN 10, if I remember correctly. Encapsulation .1Q10. IP address. This one is 128.1 in my example. 128.1. exit. We need the third, so we need .20 subinterface, description. This is visitor VLAN 20, VISITOR. Wow, Mr. Brown's having trouble remembering that spelling tonight. Okay, so now we need our encapsulation, .1Q20 for VLAN 20, and then I'll set the IP address on this guy. And this one was 192.1. Excellent. So now I have my 3 subinterfaces for my different VLANs. Okay, let's now set NAT on this. This will be something new for you. We're going to set NAT on here so it translates the IP address from the ISP into a group of IP addresses that we can use inside. So to do that, we need to tell it what interfaces are inside and outside. So interface, we'll say gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1. We're going to say IP NAT outside. That's the outside interface. So it knows which way it's translating. Now for the inside, gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0.10, we'll say IP NAT inside. We're going to say this subinterface is inside. And we're going to repeat that for the other subinterface. .20 IP NAT inside. That way it knows what interfaces or what networks it's translating. Okay, we now need the rules to translate. So we'll write the first rule and then we'll write the second rule. We'll write the first rule for VLAN 10. So let me exit on my subinterface here. And I'm going to say the rule access list, oh my goodness, there we go, access list 1. We're going to permit the 192, 168, in my case, the 128 network, the 128 subnet. We're going to permit that, and now we need the inverse mask, 0, 0. Well, this third octet 192, the inverse of that, if I write it out in binary, is 63.255. That'll be the inverse mask of that. I then say IP NAT, right here, IP NAT inside source list 1, because that's the one we're doing, IP NAT inside source list 1, that's the one we just wrote, and we are going to translate that to gigabit 0/0/1, and we're going to use the method what's called overload. So we are going to take this rule that we wrote from the inside, and we are going to use network address port translation, that's what that is, on this interface. That's what all that means. Oops. I think I need GI there. There we go. Oh, come on. Inside source list. Oh, I forgot interface. Ha ha ha. Interface. There we go. Always look at your syntax. Always look at the errors. I got ahead of myself and forgot to type interface in there. Okay. Now we're going to repeat this. We're going to say access list 2 for the other VLAN. And we're going to say the 192 subnet, because that's the other subnet. And I'll say IP NAT inside source list 2 interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/1 overload. I'll translate to that port. Exit. We'll do a show run on this guy. There's my enable secret. There's my sub interfaces. Here is my overload config for these access lists. These are the actual, we're saying, hey, this network, please apply overload NAT2 is what we're doing. Then down here is my SSH config. Okay, I want to save my config, copy, run, start, and I'm probably going to go up here and do a save as well so I don't lose anything. When we come back in the next part, we'll start connecting up workstations and seeing what we have working.